In the year 21X, Lord Boxman opened a store to arm his robot horde. But the heroes of Lakewood Plaza
are ready to fight! K.O. Renegade are in battle mode. Once you keep the bag, I silly all explode. Power up and fight, let's watch an episode of Lakewood
Podcast
Turbo.
Shut the front door. In this week's episode of Lakewood Podcast Turbo, I'm your host, Wyatt, and I too love K.O.'s mom, who is here with me today, as always.
The guy who was basically rad in that one scene where he pretends to be edgy, Buster Corp, hi.
Yeah, his Gerard Way costume.
Yeah.
The My Chemical Romance outfit, yeah. And then who is our very special guest for today's episode?
Hi, only teens have earned the right to angst and brood. It's Nicktendo.
Yeah, good to have you on. It's been, I feel like you're one of the most obvious guests to have on for an OK KO podcast because, you and I are both big fans of the show. OK KO, like, I would say my personal favorite at this point, Western animation, and then I don't know how high up there it is for you, but I know that that's like, I met you because of my very first video, which was on OK KO. So I always associate you and I with that. So, and Wander Over Yonder.
Yeah.
Both very good shows.
Yeah, those two are probably in like top 5, probably top 10 somewhere. Definitely shows that really got me interested in. Those are shows like, oh, I need to hop online and make videos about them. I think I had already started my YouTube channel at that point, but I was definitely a big champion for OK KO when it was airing, when I did like end of the year videos, like, oh, these were my favorite episodes. And
yeah, I could speak for how big of a champion you are, because I remember like I was to give like some personal background. I think I remember like discovering Nick around his like 100 subscribers. So it's kind of crazy to see he's kind of grown that insane now. And I remember like one of his first videos was, I think, the pilots for Cartoon Network. And then he did the Lakewood Podcast Turbo, and I saw that out after I watched the video, and I'm like, oh, I hope this gets a show. And I remember when the show actually happened, I know like you and another YouTuber did like episode like podcast discussions on the new episodes, and I was like, oh yeah, and I love those discussions along with watching the episodes. So it's like I do associate Nick a lot with OK KO.
Yeah, I did those with my friend Noah David, Noah Spongy. It goes by a couple names on YouTube, and we covered all of the episodes. It was just like quick discussions on all the episodes, and it was when they were doing the bombs, the 5 episodes a week drops, which you didn't get me on for one of those, and I would have started by saying, yeah, I kind of remember watching this one when it came out, but I also remember watching it in a row of like 5 or 10, because a lot of like up until this point of season 1, a lot of besides the first 6 that were released like a month earlier, a lot of these really blend together. And the funny thing, so we stopped about the time T.K.O. came out. So this feeling a little nostalgic for that kind of format. Although just now, since we're 5, almost 6 years out from the show, I just generally feel nostalgic for the show in general.
Yeah. It's weird how nostalgic this show is, despite the fact that it felt like the hot new thing for me when it came out. And then I have to like reckon with the fact that 2017, I was still working at Walmart, and my current job that I'm working as a janitor at a preschool, I've been working there for 5 years now, since 2018. And 2017, I remember, it was right around this time when OK KO came out. It was like August, I believe, when it came out. And I remember being super hyped Metroid Prime 4 just got announced at E3.
Wyatt, I'm so sorry.
I mean, Nintendo Direct is like the day we record this. There's a Nintendo Direct tomorrow, so this could just be outdated as soon as it comes out.
We will see.
As someone who follows you on Twitter, I am so sorry.
But thankfully, Sonic Mania and like Mario Odyssey and stuff like that, like those were there that year as well. So it wasn't, it wasn't like a complete loss or anything. I actually do remember 2017 very fondly because like it was the year the Switch came out and it had a return to like the type of 3D Mario games that I really loved, that like Mario 64 style.
Yeah.
With Mario Odyssey, and then Sonic Mania was like it was a dream come true, like a Saturn style Sonic game. And then like this cartoon alongside DuckTales coming out like that year, I was just like, I couldn't believe it. I felt I had an embarrassment of riches, and I really do feel, I've mentioned this before in previous episodes, but I really feel like the show went from being like a show I was really happy about and really excited for as I was watching it, like that first arc of episodes, that really sold me on the show. Mm-hmm. But this episode is what made me realize, this is going to be like way more than I expected from the show, because I was just fine with like very light continuity, very little like character growth in the traditional, I didn't expect it to be like Steven Universe as far as like setting up an epic world, and I don't think it is even at the end of everything, but this episode proved to me that they do have the confidence to tell like longer form stories and like really kind of dig into their own mythos and like establish things and like discover new things about characters of the world in a way that some of the previous episodes imply that they're just more laissez-faire about that. It's just this is vaguely canon, like whatever, there's some continuity here, but but this was the first time that it really struck me that like what the show was really going to be. And how like the highs that it could reach. So very excited to talk about it.
They've kind of already teased that like at the Face Your Fears episode, but this kind of like delivers on the promise Face Your Fears brought.
Yeah, you have the T.K.O. like teaser there, and then before at your level 100, you have like a little T.K.O. cameo. And that's like really fun to go back and rewatch some of those early episodes and see like them planting the seeds.
Yeah.
But like at the time, very similar, like it wasn't until rewatching the show that I really started to distinguish that kind of stuff, because like while just watching it like daily or like week to week as it was first airing, it did kind of all blend together in that way that Nick was talking about, where it's not that they're all bad or boring episodes, but it's just like, they're all on a very similar level. So there's not much like variation or like story happening or anything like that, so it's just like, there's some, I remember some funny jokes in this episode. I remember some good action scene in this episode. I think that this one like is able to nail that. And I think part of that is that, it has two sets of board partners for the episode. It's a double-length episode, and you have Geneva and Mira, and then Ryan and Parker. And those, like, Mira, I've mentioned before, really, really great, like, very proportionate drawings, very awesome action that they do. And they just have a very unique style. And then Ryan and Parker, like, they're like really good at being very smart and funny, like quick-witted, like tightly written dialogue and things like that, and then also really good at action. Like Parker, if you watch Mau Mau, the show that he was the showrunner for, just some awesome action in that show. So like I feel like they got like kind of the best of the board artists at this time to come together and like Voltron into just like make this episode as good as possible.
Yeah. And you just have like a really good concept and like character arc with this episode, because like you have KO dealing with like anger, basically anger issues of just like, I want to be better, but I can't. And man, that hits a bit too close to home. I'll say that. Like, it's just him basically using his rage to just like kind of lash out at the world, like, and try to use it to make it better, but it just kind of comes collapsing down, and he has to like learn like, oh yeah, like what I love like matters more, you know, right now.
Well, like the instant gratification and things like that.
Right. Yeah.
So like, as somebody who had like, especially as a kid, I had like pretty bad anger issues. I've gotten over them for the most part. You know, I mean, you'll never truly get over anger issues that are if they're like that intense, but you know, for me, I've had a very healthy relationship. Like if I'm playing a game and it's starting to piss me off, I have an easy time of just stopping playing it, you know, whereas before, when I was like a kid, I would just keep playing it until I had a tantrum, basically. And you know, so everything about KO and like that specific anger issues and that being such an integral part of his character, it was a nice surprise that was not like missing from previous episodes, but was only lightly touched upon, and then it becomes like an integral part of his character in a really interesting way, because KO a lot of times, especially in episodes where he's not in the focus, is just like a goofball and like very optimistic and, you know, maybe not one-dimensional or anything, but he's just like very in just like one mode of being a gormless happy kid, you know, whereas giving him this dimension where he feels like he's inadequate for whatever reason, and he feels like frustrated that he can't get to where he wants to be no matter how hard he tries. He's still stuck at that 0.1%. That it adds a lot of relatability to him that, you know, the series kind of started with being inside KO's head and having some relatability for him. But throughout the middle portion of the episodes that we've been watching, it's definitely, you know, it's focused on other characters and it's fleshed out the world. So finally coming back around and like giving a big episode to focus on KO and to deepen him in this way and give him like a new conflict and a new like personal antagonist in the form of shadowy figure, and then, you know, give him like an internal conflict with T.K.O. It's just like it earns its title as like a mid-season finale in the same way that Mirror Gem and Ocean Gem did in Steven Universe season 1.
Right, it's slowly like opening up the world and introducing just, you know, bigger threats and showing new sides of the characters in both of those mid-season finales. If I could take a moment to share my thoughts on kind of what we've been talking about. I think it's important to note in terms of where we are in the show being aired. This is when it started going weekly, which I think from now until I want to say Villains Night In and Out, they did weekly episodes. And then they went back to the drops. And then it gets messy with like they did a lot more of the premiere on the app. But I do remember this was like a big Labor Day premiere for Cartoon Network. And it sticks out for that in my memory. And going back to it now, it does feel a lot slower than some of the other episodes. Just, you know, taking advantage of the extended runtime where we get scenes, very dialogue heavy scenes, getting to sit with the emotions, mostly inside KO's headspace. And I think a lot of that trial and error with trying to unleash KO's anger in the scene with shadowy figure. I really appreciate how that sort of just kind of going low on the humor and just focusing on the emotion is also something that was kind of rare for the show at the time. Not really a negative, but it does feel like it's pushing it forward in that way.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite scenes in it, because it's a really good bait and switch where you're given the obvious, like, oh, of course, we see he's frustrated by the way that his friends treat him. That's going to be the catalyst that sends him into berserker mode, and then it doesn't work, and then we realize, oh, it's a little bit more complicated than that. Like, it's a little bit deeper, almost more simple, because it's just this intense feeling of inadequacy that's keeping him, that's making him angry and, like, causing this dark pit to form inside of him.
Dark pit.
Yeah. just like Smash Bros, which will be a new Smash Bros game, will be announced. I should have said Kid Icarus Uprising, because that's actually a rumor, is that there's a remaster of Kid Icarus Uprising, which I would be down for, but I would also accept a new Kid Icarus game if I could get it. But I don't know. Either way, this again, dating this podcast, this will be very poorly aged, but that's just the nature of the business. But yeah, I agree. I think that the to me, some of the more like down, kind of chiller or more like downbeat, more like emotional moments have been done with the Geneva and Mira episodes. So it makes sense, like, that this scene, is one that's bordered by Geneva. And then, to me, like, I feel like the show does a really good job of, like, balancing tones, because it has, like, such wildly different tones, and then it starts to become more pronounced here. It can have, like, these more serious moments, but for like the next half of the episode with T.K.O, it's a very comedic tone for like, it is weird and like kind of scary in that way, that it's like, what is going on with KO? But like, T.K.O is such an absurd character in a lot of ways. It's just such a funny take on the like dark mode for like a shonen protagonist. Yeah, like, to be like, oh, he turns into like an angsty teenager.
The fact that
and
he's
even in the
supposed
first
to
half,
be
when like shadowy figure like takes him. I don't know where we're going to. But the thing I was gonna say was, like, when shadowy figure takes like the fellas to the picnic, not fellas, KO to the picnic. You just see other characters just around them, and it's like, it's not that. It's a populated world and a popular plaza. It's not gonna be like that. Just that little sight gag, like, is just so interesting to me.
Yeah, Nick, I think you did cut out for a second there, before you made your point, but
Yeah, no, I think part of my favorite part of the episode is the fact that KO is experiencing all this extreme angst. Despite being a 6 to 11-year-old, the obvious joke. And I think that I really appreciate that it is viewed through someone in the early 2000s, based on, I'm assuming, the experience of a lot of the young storyboard artists. With you guys mentioned the My Chemical Romance Black Parade reference with Rad's outfit. But there's a lot of I picked up on a lot of the Shadow the Hedgehog references.
Of course.
Yeah. The music when T.K.O is introduced has a bit of that industrial metal, the record scratchy sound. I didn't even realize that there's a "Get back in your cage, faker" is one of the lines. I've seen this episode like 3 or 4 times, and I'm surprised I didn't pick up on it. But I also know the promo for the episode on Tumblr is just T.K.O mimicking the Shadow Game box art cover. I think that's
I need to search that up. I need to search that up right now.
It's Ryan Shannon, their promo for the episode.
And there's also, a previous episode, Know Your Mom, there was the Succulentus and all the new metal references there.
Yeah.
And there is he's listening to a Cactus Crew song.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was very funny. That I wrote it down. Cactus Crew Rising Shadow. Just like the fact that they're villains that are also thematically new metal, but then they are also a band that performs new metal music. Very funny. Yeah. So
even speaking of like more 2000s 2000s games, like the freaking big robot form Daryl gets, like that just T.K.O just one shots. That just looks straight off Ratchet Deadlocked.
Yeah, I mean, like that game in general is that feels like people mention this, but during that era, like everybody, they were just making things like cute characters edgy for almost no reason. Or just to appeal, I guess, to like the zeitgeist at the time, the post 9/11 zeitgeist in America, I guess. But like you had Jack 2, which was more of a GTA style game, and then you had like, the first 3 Ratchet and Clank games very similar in tone, but then Deadlocked is like a lot more edgy, a lot more like combat oriented, and like Ratchet is in like a more humanoid looking robot suit and everything. I feel like if this did come out when I was like the target demographic of the show, like I would have eaten that shit up. In the same way that I ate up Shadow the Hedgehog and Jack 2 and Jack 3 and so forth. It's just like, I feel like it was perfect that to adults watching it, it's like a charming kind of like, oh, haha, this reminds me of this. But I think, putting my mind in the place of the kids that might have been watching it, they might have just seen it as like purely cool. Maybe like a little funny. Yeah. But like they would have seen it like in the same way that, I saw those things that I mentioned.
Yeah, in general, I think it balances being cool and being a parody pretty well, which kind of applies to the whole OK KO show when you get down to it.
Yeah.
It's like, there's still like a bit of a wink and a nod, but it's not like overbearing. They still take it like seriously in a way where it's like, yeah, I could buy these character arcs,
Yeah. Yeah, like the like T.K.O coming in like cutting Daryl apart is stuck in my mind for years because it's just a really cool scene.
Right.
Like it's like genuinely like an awesome moment of like Daryl, serious business, about to blow up the plaza with a giant laser beam, and then he just gets taken out swiftly by T.K.O. It's just like a really cool moment of like establishing how powerful he is. And one thing I love about OK KO is that it has a built-in power level system into its. So like, with other shows, with things like One Piece, where there isn't really a power level system, but people love to speculate about it on Reddit, and then like Dragon Ball had one for like 2 arcs, and then by the end of the Frieza arc, it was just like, okay, Frieza's just strong. He's just really strong. Yeah. Who cares about his battle power? It's fun to have like, oh, you have the POW cards, and it's very similar to Scouters almost, where they show exactly how powerful somebody is at the time, but they don't account for any hidden power. So like we see that KO is very weak when he's just his normal self, and then we eventually learn he's so strong he can beat everybody in the world. By the end of the series, so it's just like, it's fun because that means that the conflicts can't simply be, we have to defeat T.K.O. He's too strong for that. So like in this episode, there's something else that has to be done. KO inside of himself has to take control again. And something I always remembered from the What a Cartoon episode about T.K.O.'s house, the episode in season 2, was Ian Jones Cordy Ian JQ and Toby Jones mentioning that every T.K.O. episode always has to end with the problem being solved, but also KO learning the wrong lesson, because T.K.O. continues to be a problem until the very end of the series.
Yeah, and it's like I don't want, if we may, like, get to like what that the end lesson is. He keeps like trying to suppress it, always suppressing it. Like, oh, I don't want to deal with it. I'm perfect now. I've overcome a problem, but that's not how it works. Especially
So and honestly, like, I forgot how good the like conclusion of this episode was. Like, I knew I loved this episode, but I'd almost forgotten the moment inside of his mind where it's KO remembering his lessons from his mom and then using that in order to take out T.K.O. I just always like that in stories where somebody who's a lot weaker than the opponent that they're fighting is able to win through an unconventional way. It reminds me of, like, I mean, there's many stories and things that do this, but like one that comes to mind is Kung Fu Panda, where like Po is just too fat to be hit by Tai Lung's like paralyzing moves, so he's just able to beat his ass because he can just tank every single attack, and that's where his strength comes from, is like just he has an obscene amount of defense, and it makes him the perfect counter to this villain that was so strong that it could just beat everybody easily. So yeah, I like that stuff. I feel like we're getting towards the end, or like wrapping up, but I still want to talk more about, you know, some of the other moments earlier in the episode. I do like, you know, we mentioned the the Black Parade suit with Rad. I like that. There's just something very cute about the fact that they love KO so much at this point, and they're not like embarrassed about it or whatever. They're not like very standoffish. At this point in the show, they're like firmly all good friends. Yeah. So when they try to cheer him up by like palling around with him, and then that ends up pissing him off more, it's just like a very sweet scene, and it's sad to see it like get interrupted by T.K.O.'s bad attitude. Also, like, this is one of the... Yeah, go ahead.
Like, early in the episode, Gar gets one of my, like, favorite lines. I will compliment you, like, all, like, on your heroics individually, or just...
Yeah.
Honestly, anything Gar says is gold, but that one specifically just got me.
I, like, one of my favorite types of jokes are jokes where you can see the punchline coming a mile away, you know, where, like, but it's still... Like, they're so obviously setting up the punchline that it loops back around and becomes, like, funny that you're just waiting for it to come. Yeah. So, like, you know that he's going to give, like, a, you know, good job out there. Yeah. Whatever. Like, a very lame compliment to KO. But it's just so funny to have him, like, and now I will individually compliment you for your duties, you know.
And also, like Gar gets another great line later in the episode where just, I love your mom, and it's like, not that.
Yeah.
I like that because it also was a follow-up to Face Your Fears. Kind of taking, you know, you can watch that episode and you can watch this episode, and you get two payoffs back to back. I kind of wanted to ask you guys about, since you've been rewatching the show very meticulously, the treatment of especially Rad and Enid kind of looking down on KO, not intentionally, with how they treat him. Do you think that's consistent with other episodes? Because it seemed like when I was watching it this time, I think it's like it seemed like something that was like, well, it kind of seems like something that kind of works for this episode individually, but I'm kind of questioning if that's something that's lined up with some of their spotlight episodes.
I think it's lined up pretty well with the other episodes.
I think you're right in that it's not as it's definitely more heightened here than it was in previous episodes. Yeah. I think that very early in the series, you know, Rad was definitely more of like a, you know, insensitive jerk, especially in episodes like the Jethro one, and then the Do You Have Anything in the Back? you know, but he's grown a bit since then. So this is kind of a little bit of a reset, but it's not too over the top that it's completely unbelievable.
Yeah, and even it serves the story fine, you know. It's everyone's still in character.
Like Enid, I feel like early in the show she wouldn't have even cared enough to like pretend to give him like a compliment, you know. Like she would be a little bit more standoffish or a little bit more like unenthused about it. So I think that in that case it lines up pretty well, where like she's underestimating or like kind of like giving a backhanded compliment to KO, but an earlier version of her wouldn't have even gone that far, you know. So I think it lines up a bit better for her. But Rad is also a character that they can just hit the funny button on, and then any given episode will be like, okay, Rad's an asshole in this one because it's funny. Yeah, you know, like that's the that's what they do there. But I don't know, I think, like, not saying you're doing this, but just in general, like, I've seen a lot of people that will, especially in like these big, more episodic shows, will get really frustrated about character continuity between episodes, and say like, oh man, in this episode in season 1 this character did this thing, in season 2 they did this thing, it's completely out of character. And like I too like to look for that stuff, to see like, and I will also complain if a character is out of character, but I feel like there is like a certain like type of person that like gets a little bit too worked up about that, especially in like comedy shows.
Yeah,
where it's like sometimes it's just, you just gotta be like, look, this is this character, we're doing this episode with this character, you know. Yes, it's we're not incorporating the other 4 times they've learned the same lesson, you know, but it's just, for this one we wanted to do, like, we have a new spin on it,
right?
So like I can forgive that personally, especially for shows that are a lot longer running than OK KO.
I was about to say I'm a Simpsons fan. I'm a fan of the current Simpsons episodes. So I'm totally I've that has helped me relax. Just become more relaxed than I was a couple years ago about, this joke kind of works for the character, this story, this is what they're trying to do for the story. I was just kind of questioning if it all lined up, because I have kind of recently rewatched these episodes. I've been on and off every few months when I get to meet up with a friend going through the show, and so a lot of the nuances, if you aren't watching it back to back to back, or just not paying that close attention, kind of get lost, which is not a flaw. I think it definitely makes it more rewatchable.
Yeah, I think, you know, something like Steven Universe is a good example of that, where like season 1, all the characters in season 1 are so different from how they are in later seasons. Like there's you can still tell the root of the characters exist in later seasons, but if you look at how Garnet is in like season 5 or Future or whatever, and then you look at how she is in season 1, it's very different, you know. Like she's a lot more nice and receptive towards Steven later on, whereas like early on she's very like closed off and serious, and that's like funny, like it leads to a bunch of funny jokes, but it's just like you can tell that the writers were like stretching their limbs and taking the characters in different directions, may not have been 100% consistent with previous established character traits. You know, Pearl, I feel like too, is quite different from how she is in season 1, how she is later on. Though there is still some, like, I feel like in Future, the episode where they go roller skating, that feels like a very season 1 Pearl, where she's just like excited about how weird human culture is, and it's just like giving people toilet paper and things like that. Like that, great stuff. That's one of my favorite episodes from Future. So
Future in general is pretty based,
right?
Yeah, I love
Oh no, I'm totally in the camp that had a blast with Future. especially because I was kind of going through some of the same stuff. Life Changes Steven was at the time. But yeah, I do think that that season in general being more comedy centric brought out sides of the characters we hadn't seen before. And just because it's been on my mind recently, people comparing the whole idea of being really nitpicky about character development or characters acting out of character. As someone who has been following the season of Clone High, the revival season, very closely, that has been a huge point of contention. A lot of people are resistant to that the characters can't really change and experience new scenarios. So it's been on my mind a lot.
I was thinking like you were gonna mention that Spider-Verse scene. I don't know if Wyatt's seen it yet, but that Spider-Verse.
I've seen. I just saw it yesterday. In fact, extremely good movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that one Spider-Verse scene where it's like, oh, that cameo character wouldn't do that because of what we know about them. But when it's like, well, it's for the plot and it's not necessarily their story. So you know.
Yes. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
I remember you. I remember you mentioning at one point, I think you messaged me like around the time that Spider-Verse 2 came out about the spot.
Yes.
And I'm glad to report, oh my God, I couldn't believe I'm so happy about how that character is handled, because it's like, yeah, I don't want to spoil too much, obviously.
It is a very Wyatt core character.
He's the loser villain of your dreams, yeah.
Yes, 'cause, like, there's nothing I love more than, like, complete loser villains, and then you slowly start to realize, oh my God, they're crazy. They have, like, a crazy, like, Hater is, like, the perfect example of that, where it's, like, you know, it feels like Dominator is just completely outclasses him, but Hater, when he actually tries and puts effort into like his power, has something worth fighting for, is able to like easily match her. So it's like that stuff I always really love.
I guess speaking of villains who are haters, like coming back to this show, no Boxman in this episode.
Yeah, next episode, which is one of my favorites of season 1, is, you know, it's a Boxman. He's the main character of the episode, so it's like focused on him, and it's like all about the aftermath of this episode.
Okay.
I always love that.
I completely forgot that's coming.
Yes. So like it feels like a necessary piece of the puzzle, especially because we only get like the first half of the episode has Daryl show up, and then the second half of the episode, T.K.O, for all intents and purposes, is the antagonist. And he calls for a power battle, which is like one of the like 3 that happen in the show, like explicitly called for in the show, because we can assume that the stuff with the box bots are power battles. But I remember watching the pilot and being like, oh, okay, so they're gonna call for a power battle, be like Shaolin Showdown or something like that, where they like go into like they have like a competition against each other, and then like it only happens a few times, maybe like 2 or 3 times per season. It's very rare, whereas like most of the time they're just fighting the Boxmore bots, and they just show up and then fight. Even when like in season 3, when they're fighting regular villains that aren't the robots, like it seems like they're just rescuing people from villains rather than like challenging villains to like one-on-one battles. But I don't know. That's not like a complaint. It's just a thing that I noticed.
Yeah,
right.
I mean,
it's not an explicit ceremony afterwards.
Power battles wouldn't like make or break the show. Let's be real.
Yeah, I personally like a dream of mine would be to make a show that has like a similar concept to like a Shaolin Showdown or something like that, where it is like
brawl or some shit.
Yeah, like something where it's like, oh, these characters are having a contest against each other that's raised to like mythic levels, but it's over something really stupid. Like it's something really like minor and really you know, when you just think about it out of context, it becomes incredibly stupid, but the characters are treating it like a life or death situation.
Riot?
Yeah, Gates is a good example of that, but more specifically Robotac and Kabutak, the Metal Hero shows, do that like excellently.
Yeah,
I've only seen the 2
Metal Hero show.
Yeah, I've only seen the episodes of those that have been subbed by Toei Tokusatsu World, which is 2 each, because that's all they did. It's very pathetic that they are like, oh yeah, we're releasing all these shows for English-speaking audiences, but we'll only sub the first 2.
I think
and then
this
for
is
the
when,
rest
like,
of
YouTube community captions were still there, so it's like, oh, people will just be able to, but now YouTube community captions aren't there, so oops.
Yeah, and also that's so stupid. The idea that they're like, all right, we're not gonna pay a subtitler. You guys are gonna crowdsource your subtitles and just come together and subtitle these shows for us. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm just waiting for somebody to finish Blue SWAT and then I'll watch it.
I think Blue SWAT's finished.
I believe so. Yeah, I have to get around to it. Very good show. Cops do suck, but I do trust those cops. So Blue SWAT, they're the only good ones. But
put that on the DVD release disco.
Yeah. It's a great quote for the cover.
But I did want to mention before we wrap up, I love that the episode is separated into 2 halves. That's just something, like, usually with the 20-minute episodes, you get your 2 act breaks, and then, like, whereas in, like, anime, there's only 1 act break in the middle.
And
so,
they even
or
have
at least,
a little
like,
anime bumper.
They got the eye
so that's what I'm
catches.
saying, like, yeah, so that, like, the eye catch there is not an actual, like, when it would be airing, it would have, like, the 2 act breaks, whereas, and then that's just there for show, basically. But I like that because it does separate the episode into 2 halves, and it's very cute, like, very, it reminds me of Dragon Ball Z, probably most explicitly.
I gave me more Yatsura vibes. Usura
Yatsuya, yeah.
Also, thank you for putting the yellow subtitles. I said this on Twitter, but if you want to make your anime homages like cooler, just put yellow subtitles on it.
Yeah, because the fan sub. I remember, like, on the podcast that we did about Evangelion, Toby talked about how he got, like, he got into Ava through, like, those old fan subs, and at one time he had to, like, order a bunch of tapes from somebody, like, send money to some random person outside, across the country, and just hope to God in a few months he got these subbed VHS tapes of the show. So, like, I think about that because I'm just young enough that DVDs, that's how I got into, like, finding anime, going to, like, thrift stores and finding DVDs in, like, 2006 and stuff like that.
It's always been, like, a pirate's life for me, I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Very, very jealous because, until, like, we just had to take what we could get, like, going to the Anime on Demand channel and finding, there's just complete garbage on there, like, Excel Saga and Ninja Nonsense.
Ninja Nonsense?
Yeah, I can't remember what the Japanese name is, but that was what the localized name was. It's like a gag series, very sexy, like a lot of those shows, like they're a lot of horny stuff on Anime on Demand. So it's very embarrassing to look back on it. And I'm not like I wouldn't call myself a prude necessarily, but I'm also, like, not a very horny person in general. So I just don't find, like, the cheesecake anime appealing. Only in very rare cases do I enjoy that stuff. I would say Golden Boy is a big one, where it's like that's
Golden Boy.
Yeah, that's just a great series, beautifully animated because it's an OVA, and has, like, very explicit sexual stuff in it, but it doesn't feel, I don't know. There's just a quality to it that doesn't feel like as, like, embarrassing as, like, panty shots and, like, Full Metal Panic and things like that, and, like, the early 2000s Digipaint anime.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
But anyway, yeah. So I think, is there anything else that we need to cover before we wrap up this episode?
I got a few random things in my notes.
Okay.
You guys were talking about PAL cards, and I feel like I related to not OK KO. I was gonna call him OK KO. That's not the name of the character. No, him refreshing his PAL card like it's a social media feed. Very relatable. Unfortunately.
Oh.
Yeah. And is this the first time we see that PAL cards can be like quote unquote hacked with shadowy figures? What,
yeah, I think so, because there hasn't really been like
level?
a PAL card.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like level 100, level 100. Oh,
okay.
Kind of, but that was more
because
of
I know Dendy's power.
Yeah,
kind of goes
that's
into that.
more. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of
Great
the model sheet pose gag for KO when it's just like the outline when he's missing. That's one of my favorite runners from the show.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Love that stuff.
It's
Yeah,
a
I
funny
love
pose
just
in
subtly
general.
meta stuff like that. So.
Yeah, the premise of KO kind of calling out that that he hasn't really developed that much is a little meta. But I think it it kind of plays off the idea that calling attention to like what you guys were talking about earlier, how the first episode sets up KO's goal of being a great hero, and how not that the show has avoided that, but it's interesting to see it being directly addressed.
Yeah, I don't know, the past few episodes, like we mentioned, are very focused on other characters. There's some that were focused on KO's development. We mentioned like Face Your Fears, though that's only like in a slight kind of way. It's mostly like Gar and learning about the sandwich flashback.
The sandwich.
Yeah.
Right.
but yeah, so
Plaza Prom, the one right before this?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
very good episode.
yeah, Plaza Prom.
Plaza Prom,
And-
One Last Score. Those are come before.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So those like very like comedic, more like episodes that focus on KO but are more comedic. They don't really like develop him like too much as a character. Just like, yeah, I think that this is the first time since like that initial arc of episodes, like the first 6 episodes, that we've seen some serious headway be made to changing KO and who he is. I think KO being like a pretty dynamic character is a good choice, because a lot of times in comedy shows the protagonist is a more static character. Maybe they're proactive of sorts, but they generally stay the same, whereas in more recent shows, like in the post Steven Universe sort of environment, you have characters that do change a lot as the show goes on. Even Steven, though, like, he stayed pretty much the same until the Lapis episodes. And then after that point, he started to gain a little bit more of that emotional intelligence and started to have deeper bonds with some of the other gems.
Things.
Yeah, and then by the end of the first season, you feel the beginnings of a hero. Yeah. Basically, you have him running back to the beach to save his friends and confronting Jasper, everything like that. And then similarly, I love the season 1 finale. It's one of my favorite episodes of the whole show. So I'm very excited for us to get to that, because it feels like if the show ended there, I would have been mostly fine. It would have sucked to not see any follow up to the Daryl usurping Boxman thing. But for the most part, I think that it's for that era of the show, that season 1 version of the show, it's a perfect finale. And then I feel like this is that first necessary big leap towards getting to that point, and we'll get a few more big episodes along the way. Season 1B is a little bit different from season 1A, and yeah, I don't know, I'm excited for the future of this podcast and keep on going, us to get to the end of season 1, and then thankfully season 2 and 3 are shorter, so we'll get done with them much quicker. But the season 1, it's the big one. It's 50 something episodes. So, but I think that will do it for this week's episode of Lakewood Podcast Turbo. Nick, thank you so much for coming on as a guest. Do you want to tell everybody where they can find you?
Thank you. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at It's Nicktendo. My YouTube channel, youtube.com/Nicktendo Reviews. I don't have the brand names coordinated, probably should. But yes, you can find me there where I talk about, just share my thoughts on animation. I got a countdown video coming up on it's about Spider-Man cartoons. It's based on a live event I did a couple weeks ago, so be on the lookout for that, and trying to have monthly videos for the rest of the year. That's the plan. Will it happen? We'll have to see. But thank you guys for having me on. Yeah, sorry, the audio lag issues were very frustrating when we were recording. So sorry if it was a little quieter, but it was a pleasure being on to talk about this show.
It was a pleasure having you on.
Thank you.
Of course. Buster, why don't you tell us where we can find you?
Well, if you're watching the video version of this, you're probably already on my channel. So hi, if you want to see more things, I'm Buster Corp. I just talk about whatever, mostly toku shows, but I do cover the occasional cartoon, the movies, the comics, all the things I'm interested in, whatever I feel like talking about that week. Also at Twitter at BusterBoy3. Very stream of consciousness, just kind of talking about whatever I like, whatever's pissing me off, but like, I like doing it in a funny way, because comedy is funny. So, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
that sounded way better in my head.
Comedy, you know what? My favorite thing about comedy is how funny it is.
Yeah, I mean, I won't argue with you on that. It is pretty funny.
Why? Talk about your things.
Well, you can find me at twitter.com/WazRanger. That's WAZP Ranger. Mostly just stream of consciousness stuff. Probably talking about Metroid Prime 4 because it was definitely announced tomorrow, or definitely shown tomorrow. But either way, you can check me out there. WazRanger, WAZP Ranger, twitter.com. And you can go to my YouTube channel. That's It's Only Magic. I haven't made a video in a really long time, but I haven't made a video, like a cartoon video, since last year, since the OK KO one, just because I've been so both busy with other personal projects, including writing and things like that, and also like this year has just been such an emotional drain on me in a lot of ways that it's just been very hard for me to get that motivation to make videos. But I really, really want to get back to making videos. I did take a long vacation this week so that I can, mostly so I can play Final Fantasy 16. But, otherwise, like, I want to take some time and really bang out a few of the scripts. I have like 3 scripts that are in the middle of being written, almost done, but I just haven't had the motivation to really finish them. And usually writing is my favorite part of the process. I just love to spew garbage onto the page, basically. So hopefully I can get into a position where I have a few scripts finished and I can start like making videos on a semi-frequent pace. Again, you gotta forgive me. This year has been rough. So either way, thank you all for listening to this. This is a great outlet for me, this podcast, and getting to talk about one of my favorite shows. It's just, it's not no work, but it's just little enough work that it doesn't feel emotionally overwhelming. So I appreciate that. And it's been like fun to get to talk to Buster and get to know them better and get to bring on cool guests like Nick. Hopefully we'll have you back. I know you wanted to do the pilot episode, the Let's Watch the Pilots as well, so we'll probably get you back for when we're doing those episodes. I'll remember this time to, like, now that we're not doing the Hulu order, we're just doing the actual order of the episodes after this point, because the Hulu's all screwed up. So
it's screwed up me trying to watch the show.
Yeah, so we're just doing the air order from this point onward, so it'll be much easier to schedule everything out. There won't be like 2 orders that were like different people are looking at, and then we get confused that way. Anyway, join us next time as we talk about the next few episodes of OK KO. The Stop Attacking the Plaza. That's the name of the next one. We'll see you there.
This ends now!
Oh, yeah? What? You planning on revealing a secret power move?
Nah, I just told your mom.
KO! How could you? You know I'm always willing to support your choices, but this phase has gone too far!
It's